there are no things as bad habits. The first fight is always here. When life gets in the way, how do you still manage to maintain them? That is the way to think about it. The way that I like to define an awesome life is that whatever you choose to do, you can. Trying to do the hardcore hard thing every time is not going to lead you to success. There's a time for it, but there's a time for consistency that comes in. How do we live more conscious lives by first getting aware of these and then saying, is this particular habit serving me or not anymore?
Ashdin Doctor knows a lot about habits. He's the habit coach. He's someone you listen to week on week, really understand how to build your relationship with habits, how to adapt them, so you can build your most awesome life. Today I'm going to talk to him about all of these and his new book, but I'm also going to understand how he became the habit coach. So all this and more on this episode. But before we go there, I want to make sure you hit subscribe and smash the bell icon, going straight into my chat with Ashdin. Also trying to figure out where his beard comes from. I have to start by asking you this question. What is the weirdest habit you had growing up?
Growing up habit, I haven't even thought about it, but probably it'll be a sugar habit because our entire family were sugar addicts. So sugar on anything, sugar on dal chawal,
Sugar and dal chawal.
sugar on dal chawal. Then we went through a bacon bits phase. So then bacon bits were on eggs, bacon bits were in ice cream, bacon bits were on everything. So I
Bacon
think
bits on ice cream I can understand.
it's damn good, yeah. Salty, sweet.
Yeah. It's weird that you say that. I used to do this thing where I would try to figure what foods don't go together. I once ate Coca-Cola with rice. Was not the best
No, I
combination.
think
Did not work out well.
as
for
a
me.
child or like right now, like last
Not
month
right
you
now.
were trying.
No, right now. But as I got older, I tried to mix like things with alcohol. Like I've tried like sambar and whiskey, and I've tried random things like that. But again, not the best idea. Rasam though goes really well with a lot of things I've realized.
Rasam and alcohol, na? So
Rasam and
then
alcohol.
The spicy and the throat burning will happen together.
It's the best. No, I wanted to start off by saying as a kid, because when I hear you talk about habits and when and what you've written and everything else, it almost feels like you've been on a journey with habits themselves, and I want to figure out where that journey started from.
So I think for me, the consciousness about the habits started when I read Power of Habits many, many, many moons ago. Right? I was still working in Ormax. We were doing our thing. And we actually created a product for habits. So on understanding how consumers buy products basis habits. So we called it Habitology. And we were actually understanding the way that you can insert your product into a consumer's daily life habits-wise. And then somewhere along the line, I must have forgotten about it. Life came in the way. And then habits restarted again after this whole habit coaching thought and idea came up. But I think through growing up, it was always a subconscious gathering of habits. That's how most of us grow up in life.
Going to the time when you said it started, becoming more of a defined piece, how does it shift from, there's a point, I think there's an inflection point, right? You start off being interested in something, then it starts becoming a larger part of your life, then it becomes what you primarily focus on. What was that?
So for me, I think it started off by this aha moment, saying that trying to do the hardcore hard thing every time is not going to lead you to success, right? The more you push, unfortunately, that is the mantra that most of us receive from the media, from people, etc. There's a time for it. But there's a time for consistency that comes in. And for me, I think the idea around habits happened when I was again going through this whole phase of wanting to change my body, nice big paunch, zero athleticism, right? I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. So how do you go from there on your fitness journey was a habit journey for me, because I realized I just have to be consistent at this and then I will reach the destination. So for me personally, that was that inflection point. When I realized it was something bigger was when people started saying that I don't know how to do it, right? I don't know how to remain consistent and I don't have the ability to motivation-wise to continue. So that's why I stopped. So that's when I realized that, maybe I can also, help people in understanding how to be consistent at the changes that they want to make. And that's when it dived into that. But when did it become a part of life? When the podcast came out, for sure. Because till then it was still one-on-one coaching with friends, family, etc. But once the podcast came out, everything exploded. So for me, that is when it became Raison d'être.
It's interesting that you spoke about physicality, right? Because and I have a bit of a theory, and I want to understand if that is even partially true. Is that your journey with habits start with something which is almost like a physical thing you have to change. For me, it was the same thing, right? Couldn't carry a newborn baby around for too long, and I started getting really tired. I think Leia was 4 or 5 months old, and I would carry for like 10 minutes and get tired. And I had like big biceps, and I'd worked out, like had bulked up, but no strength. And that kind of brought me to that habit of like, I will work out no matter what, like 5-6 days a week, no matter what happens. And I kept to it. But it was, again, quite a physical shift. And it's continually been that I need to move and build that habit in. I think everything else has been added to that. But at the core of it is this innate, this physical movement needs to happen for me to be, like I miss all all the habits I need to have on off days, most times. But some of the physicality is what almost becomes a trigger for me.
Correct. It's your anchoring habit. So it is once the exercise routine happens, everything else gets pulled in along with it. But Varun, an easy way of thinking about habits, we always think about habits as actions. Tying your shoelace is a habit, brushing your teeth is a habit, going to the gym is a habit. But the way that I like to think about habits are our actions and our thoughts. The second part gets forgotten often, right? We don't realize that we have habitual thoughts, that the waking up in the morning and saying life sucks is a habit, right? The way that we think that we are not good enough is a habit. Every time we see somebody and swipe on Instagram and they're like, wow, I wish what they had. I wish I had what they had, it's a habit. So once we get to knowing this part, then you can choose to say, do I want to start with actions or do I want to start with thoughts? Sometimes thoughts are easier, especially if you want to start journaling, go for therapy. At least those are the ways that you can change these habitual thoughts that we get.
I want to go into the thoughts part because I somehow never looked at thoughts as a habit. For me, even journaling for me is a physical activity, right? To put pen on paper. And how do you even realize that? Because not all habits are good. And I feel a lot of the habits we end up having are bad. Like my oldest example is the fact I was a smoker. I was a smoker for a good decade plus till I quit. But again, I know that was thought connected because of why I was smoking. But how do you even like realize which are thought-based habits that you have? Because they might be tougher to spot, right?
So self-awareness is one aspect of it. And there are tools for self-awareness. So for example, journaling is a tool for self-awareness. So these are the kinds of habitual thoughts that I have. The second is when you go to a therapist, right? The first thing that they'll do is they'll ask you about listing down your belief systems, right? What are your belief systems? Money doesn't grow on trees, right? Rich people are people who cheat people. These are all thoughts that somewhere have been programmed in us. We picked it up either from our parents talking about it, friends talking about it. And that's the key thing about most of our habits. They're all subconsciously picked up. It means that we did not choose them. And because we haven't chosen them, we are living subconscious lives, right? So the whole idea is how do we live more conscious lives by first getting aware of these and then saying, is this particular habit serving me or not anymore? And if it's not serving me, okay, now what can I do to change it? And that is the key. So journaling is one, going to a therapist is another. The other is to understand, for example, there's a lovely chart. It's called the emotions wheel, a Plutchik's chart. Right? I'm sure you know about this colorful thing. Take it, stick it to your softboard at work or stick it to your fridge.
Explain the emotions wheel for someone who doesn't know it.
So basically, normally when you ask somebody about naming emotions, they'll maximum be able to name 5 emotions. Anger, sadness, happiness, this, that. But there are like 35 emotions, right? So very often, what do we end up doing when somebody does something to us? We said, I felt very bad. Now, feeling bad is not an emotion. Bad is not an emotion. What do you mean by you felt bad? Oh, I felt betrayed. Now betrayed is an emotion. Now I know what to do about betrayal, right? I felt guilty. Now I know what to do about guilt. But if you just keep saying, I felt bad, I felt good, I felt sad, I felt angry, you don't have awareness of what it is that you're feeling, right? So if you can understand the feelings and then you understand the thought behind that feeling. Why did you feel betrayed? You felt betrayed because you had an expectation from this person. Maybe you felt like a doormat because I was giving, but the other person was not giving back. right? So now you suddenly realize the thought process that is taking place in these actions. And what can I do now to change it, right? What are the actions I can take, or what are the thinking process I can take for that?
It's almost about digging deeper, right? For what you're saying is that, you start off by saying, I'm feeling a certain way. Like, it's almost like that, it's that whole three whys thing, right? Why? Or like, just like, why? You keep going down that and eventually come down to the root cause.
Correct.
You keep going down there. But what that also requires you to kind of is to not move at the pace of light like we all try to do. You have to slow down, to literally plug the show name, which is you have to take a pause to be able to figure that whole thing out. I want to understand the parallel journeys of you at one point understanding habits, and what goes behind them, and what you've learned as you've worked with people for them to kind of change and build their own habits. How does that feed into your system?
So the way that I like to approach things is I like to geek out on things before I start doing them. Okay, so even the book, I read 4 books on how to write before I started writing. Right. So I need to understand the complete
Same.
theory on something before I start doing it. So that is the way that I started approaching it. Right. So I read every book that was there. Atomic Habits hadn't come out at that point of time. So it came out after we started coaching. So at that point, it was almost like validation for it. And when we came out with, so I started with a theoretical approach to my habit change, and then started figuring out what are the things that worked and not. Now, when I started working with clients, I realized that explaining the theory to my clients made no sense. They weren't interested in the theory. They were saying that now, but if my
Give me a solution.
give me a solution. If my daughter suddenly comes in the middle of when I'm doing this, what do I do? Right? That is actual life. Right? So how do you have these habits away from the clinical understanding of habits, but into our homes? Right? When life gets in the way, how do you still manage to maintain them? That is the way to think about it. Right? I'm very lucky. I can shift my life around. I am not necessarily tied to too many things. But I know people who have so many entanglements that you have to realize how to juggle all of these things. So for me, that was that big transition on how do we make this practical for people to do every day?
Almost like actionable insights that you use in your life. Right?
Correct.
And that's true, actually. Even if we have the intention to do something, life gets in the way often enough. And I've struggled with this for the last maybe 3 to 6 months. I think I formed a set of habits while just working from home and doing stuff from home. Then the world opened up and you had to go out again, and half those habits went for a toss. And I had to literally reframe and say, what do I keep? What do I let go of? Or do I have to figure a whole new habit altogether? And just being able to adapt to that change, and maybe even realizing what habits to keep. I feel oftentimes we don't even realize what we're supposed to keep. We kind of stick to things because, oh, no, this is a habit I have. How can I let this one go?
And I spent so much time getting it.
Exactly.
How can I now? It's like running, right? Like you started running. You finished the marathon? You did the marathon?
No, I haven't. I'm next year.
Next year. So running. For many people, running started off as one habit that they work so hard on. Maybe it's not serving them anymore. Right? Maybe they have whatever, ankle pain, knee pain, whatever's happening to them. But it's so hard for them to let go because they were invested so much time into it. Right? Maybe weight training might be more oriented towards their goals, but they will not make that transition because of this block. Absolutely right.
Yeah. And like you mentioned the marathon, right? I've thought about running it maybe 3 months ago. And I said, either I can rush into this and say in the next 2 months I have to figure this out and run, or I'm going to take a year. I'm in no rush. And so it's like a low pressure system of just week on week building that system of, okay, I'm going to make running a part of my life. So eventually when I do it, and I don't think I'll even try to do the full, I will just do a half and be happy with it.
For the joy of running.
For the joy of it. I don't want to do it for a goal. I want to do it because I just enjoy doing it. And you talk about this perspective of living an awesome life. I wanted to tap into that. I wanted to explain what you mean by living an awesome life.
So for me, it is, from a body point of view, it started off in my journey, which was when, like I said, totally unfit, could not climb a few flight of stairs. My goal for myself was I would never want to be scared of my body again. Right? That was the starting point. That means now, whatever I do, my body should be able to do. Which is when my all those high altitude trekking started. My first trek was Everest Base Camp. Right? Out of all of them, I said, "Chalo, I've never trekked in my life. We'll do Everest Base Camp." Right? That's how.
Go straight to the.
And then after that was higher peaks and Kilimanjaro and all those kinds of things. So that was all fun stuff to do. But I think the way that I like to define an awesome life is that whatever you choose to do, you can, right? There is nothing necessarily hindering you in that direction. Many a times there's so many hindrances in our lives. Either it is our mind stopping us, which is the biggest one. The second one is financial hindrances, attachment hindrances. How do we realize all these things are preventing us, and how do we make those choices for an awesome life? For me, that is the thing. So can you make the change that you want, and can you have the life that you want, instead of thinking that this is the life that you've been dealt? Now you have to deal with it.
Tell me this thing about our mind saying don't do this, right? Because there's this whole concept of something your mind is saying and something that is chatter. And the fact that not everything your mind's telling you something you need to follow or even believe is true. And I feel that's one of the most important things to, I wouldn't even say train, you got to figure your relationship with that part of your mind for you to even be able to start doing something as a cyclical piece. Is that a core part of what you believe will really drive habits? Is that you almost enhancing your relationship with your mind compared to anything else?
So I'll answer this in two ways. The first way is to understand that the first fight is always here, right? Like in the book, I talk about whenever people want to make a change, there are two aspects to their life. One is the desire for the change, and the other is the fear of that change. The desire we can understand because we all have the desire for change. The fear is a subtler one. It is the one that says that, but that means I'll have to change my life. But that means it'll get harder. But I won't get time with my child. But I won't be able to do this, right? It is that which is what you're referring to as chatter. It is all the fear stuff that is coming out. So this is where the tug of war begins. And ultimately, it is which side is stronger that actually wins. Or you break this entire thing and realize that change is going to happen. We'll kind of reduce the damage as much as possible. So, which is where starting small, starting easy makes a big difference in this process. Now, that is the habit understanding of this. But the second way of thinking about this, and I know your mom's written a book on spirituality, is to think about it from that point of view. So if you ever read the Hermetic philosophies, right? If you read the tablets of thought, for example, the Emerald tablets, they all start by saying the world is nothing but what the mind perceives, right? We see it in our yoga philosophies as well. Your mind is creating the world around you. That means you have the ability to create whatever world around you as well. That is more now my personal philosophy. This was the habit one. This is the personal one.
And the personal one is actually the more intriguing one. But it's a tough one to, I think it takes some time to understand, but also to balance out, because it can also go down like what seems like you're going beyond what is supposed to be spirituality and going into stuff that no, you have to believe that this is a thing. But I feel what's most interesting about that is that shows you the possibilities of what you can actually look at the world as.
Yeah.
And if you look at the world from that sense that, I often talk to a friend of mine who's colorblind, and I've always been fascinated as to how the world looks to him. And I remember he and I were having this one chat, and we were talking about the fact that, he doesn't know how the world looks to me. And I don't know how the world looks to him. But we're having a shared experience of talking about our own versions of things. And I feel that's almost created a separate perception of the world for the two of us and for all of us as a group of friends. And I always look at spirituality that way. It's like the more you share it and the more you're aligned to it, your combined experiences, combined thought process kind of come together to build a certain view of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like this blue color could be something completely different to you and I would never know it, right? In the same way, the way that I like to think about spirituality is you have to wear your Indiana Jones hat and go exploring, right? You have to be somebody who's decided to explore it and say, let's see what happens, right? And that is the key thing to it. It's not a definite answer, right? If you're looking for a definite answer, no, that is more religionish. But like thinking about it as a journey, I think that's the best way of thinking about it.
Are you a curious person by nature?
On Tombstone, born curious would be the thing that would come. So there were two lines for Tombstone. One is born curious, and the second one was failed one. Right? You have to fail at everything, and you have to fail continuously at everything, and then everything happens.
So I have to ask you about this because you mentioned fail so many times and one. People keep telling you that you have to keep failing and failure is the best teacher. I always found that people miss one part is that you got to learn from every failure and evolve. If you fail and do the exact same thing which happens and there's something wrong, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. And
Totally
even like
buddhu.
knowing when to stop failing at something.
Yeah. If you've not learned from it, then it is a complete waste, right? Even relationships, right? Why did they do this? Forget about why. What did you learn from it, right? If you learned something from it, this relationship was the best thing that happened to you. If you didn't learn from it, buddhu. You'll make the same mistake again. Somebody else will come to teach you the same lesson.
Since you brought up relationships, right? And I feel habits also kind of rub off on, and I'm tagging back to what I said about my friend. Do you believe that as much as habits are individual choices, that you can form them better if you do it with some form of social connection, like you're building a habit together, you're making this thing together. How much does that help feed into it?
Lovely. There are three things here. The first one is understanding that having an accountability partner makes a big difference. So either it is you and your partner that is an accountability partner, you and your friend that is accountability partner. The best accountability partners are children. Okay, because they will say, Daddy, you said you were going to do this, you have not been doing. Then you know how.
You told me you will not look at your phone while having food.
Yeah.
And
Then
I have
you're
that
looking at your
accountability
phone.
partner at home. Yeah.
Right? So children are the best accountability partner. So individualistically, that is one. The second you can do socially. For example, on Instagram, you form a group saying that I'm going to do this, you all are accountable, or join me. So when we do a no sugar challenge of 100 days, it is that aspect of community that builds this accountability partnerness in it. On the flip side, the kind of people that you surround yourself with also have a massive impact on your habits. So there was a very interesting study done that said that in a group of 5 people, if one obese person is introduced, the entire other group in weight increases. Right? It is because now you said we'll go salad, and they say, no, arey, mard ban, we'll have pizza. Right? So suddenly everything has increased because of it. So it's interesting to notice that that is another relationship between having the accountability partners. So choose people who are aligned with your goal when it comes to accountability partners.
Yeah, it's so true, because it's very easy for someone to pull you away from a habit you believe is healthy for you to do, right? And we've all, I don't think we have to even explain individual stories. We all have had those. The only reason I could quit, and I mentioned smoking earlier, I could only quit smoking was because I'd quit my job and the only person around me was Rohit, who wasn't a smoker. So suddenly I didn't even need an accountability partner. I just had someone around who didn't smoke. And that just made it easier for me. I crossed my first couple of months very easily without even
You didn't have to go down, nothing. The social aspect went away.
Yeah, it went away. And I feel what we also kind of forget is that one single habit can connect to so many aspects of your life you don't even realize. Is that like I've just started to, we did an episode a while back with Marcus Renee, and Marcus spoke about fasting. And I've always been like, okay, I don't need to fast. Why will I fast? And I always you always trivialize things which might become a good habit to have. And I have this tendency where I'll have an early dinner, which is about, let's say, between 7 and 8. But there's the munchies. And my munchies are always sugar driven, fruit or sugar driven. And those go on till I go to bed. It's like I go to bed about 10:30ish. So between 8 and 10:30, there will be some everything from peanut chicky to strawberries to grapes.
Boredom eating.
Boredom. Basically, you need something.
Where's the masti?
Yeah. So I've spent the last 1 week, and I thought it'd be interesting for me to try to start forming a habit before we do this episode. So last 1 week, I have not touched food post 8 p.m. Only have had anything at 8 a.m. in the morning. I didn't go 12 hours. I'm not going to hyper 15 hours and all that. 8 hours.
But
12 hours.
Intermittent fasting is beautiful. Must
No. I thought I'll do it slowly. I've done 12 hours now. I'll slowly make that 13, push other 15. And I realized that once I decided, it required me to do two things. It's to not have those around. Like on the weekend, I was like, it's weekend. Before 8 p.m., I ate the chicky. I have a peanut chicky problem. It's a thing. I'll mention an entire packet of peanut chicky by myself. But it was around. When it wasn't there, I'm not craving it. But it was there. And I feel that the two things which I learned in the last 1 week on this is, one is I didn't leave the things around which were pushing me to go after them. The fruit wasn't as much a thing as it was the chicky. But the other one was I set a slightly low bar. I didn't put like a high bar saying 15 hours from day one. It started slow. And that kind of taught me that, okay, maybe it's just my mind saying I don't need it. Whereas the extra piece, I've been sleeping better. I've been waking up fresher. In general, other pieces like I felt sleep faster, which were all things I didn't consider, even though it's not like I haven't read about this stuff. It's like I blocked out that part of my mind. So you forget what the other pieces you get out of a habit versus, oh, this is the direct piece you get out of it.
It is all the peripheral stuff that actually makes it interesting, right? And it is stuff that we completely ignore because it doesn't fit our belief system or paradigm at that point of time. If somebody had told you you have to stop eating peanut chicky, you would have gone mad.
Still will go, man. There are a few things in this world I will not give up. One of them is peanut chicky. Peanut chicky. It's a random.
All right, so all podcast listeners, you know what to give Varun now. We're going to tell you the address of the studio.
It's a childhood memory.
Please just send peanut chickies here.
So let me explain this. And I've actually sat down and said, why peanut chicky? I can resist like chocolate and all, like, doesn't matter. None of these things matter. Fruit and peanut chicky. Fruit is just generally because I genuinely enjoy anything fruity. So it's just a flavor piece. But I think I went back saying my association with peanut chicky is from childhood, where you would get those packets of round peanut chicky balls, which I would love to eat. It was one of those treat pieces for me. So connects back in my head of saying, no, ending the day with something that makes you really happy. So if it's around, I'll order it. I'll have it. If it's not at home, I'll order it. I'd actually gone off that wagon for a while till still, I think it was Rohit. Or someone gave me a packet of chicky because they had an extra one. I started again. So my explanation is that sometimes it connects back to just my happy place, and I didn't want to leave my happy place.
Yeah, absolutely. It is that memory that you're attached to at that point of time.
And this random roundabout about peanut chicky also happened right now in conversation because I want to kind of go towards just kind of the fundamental behaviors that surround a habit. And I'd want you to kind of run through saying, what are the pluses we kind of get out of a habit beyond what we get from just the habit itself?
So there are 2-3 big ones. The first one is that your mindset changes. Okay. When you start doing a habit, you start identifying with that new habit that you've started creating, right? So now I've started going to a calisthenic gym. Now I'm a calisthenic athlete. Right. So now I want to start doing human flag. I don't necessarily want to start doing concentration curls. So my mindset has changed. And I think that is a side benefit of a big habit change. The second thing that happens is that what we don't realize is that all our habits form trains. You know, like how we have railgadi. Yeah. The same way we have trains. That means one habit has to just do the pulling and all the other habits downstream will follow. Okay, so if you change a habit, what happens is you change the downstream habits that are following. Chances are a habit that is serving you will also make the other habits a little better than what they are currently. So that's the way to think about how one small habit change will have actually a downstream effect taking place with this.
That can also work the other way around it. Like one bad habit can pull everything else down the...
Absolutely. And there are two aspects of it. One bad habit that you put... There are no things as bad habits. There are habits that don't serve you. Habits that serve you, habits that don't serve you. Because your bad habit might be somebody else's good habit. So, or it served a purpose at some point of time. So that habit that doesn't serve you will have a ripple effect on the others. But an interesting thing otherwise also happens when we say that I want to now change this habit and we just yank a habit out of the train. That means what we've done is we've disconnected the train. ये आगे जाएगा, ये रह जाएगा. Right? So what we have to do is we have to learn that you don't just yank a habit out of your life. You don't suddenly stop smoking. You always realize that it has transitioned into something else. So the same time that you spent smoking has now transitioned into something else. Maybe it was time that you spent talking to your business partner at that point of time instead of going down to have a smoke. So you realize that it was replaced with something instead of just yanked out of the system.
Yanking out is interesting because I feel if you yank out the wrong thing and you don't replace it, then you might not stick to the change in habit, but you might also go a little like out of whack, right? Because your mind might not accept the fact that one saying, how is this suddenly a thing? But as a flip side, you always heard is saying you got to go cold turkey, you got to like just let it go and like don't touch it from tomorrow morning and stuff like that.
So the way that I think about it is the cold turkey stuff, you think about them as challenges. Okay, so 100-day no sugar challenge is cold turkey challenge. It is not a habit, right? The challenge teaches you what your body will go through during that period. The challenge teaches you what your life will change like, the societal life will change like. Now imagine I suddenly start going out and my friends who are dessert people and I say, "Nee, I'm just going to sit here and have chamomile tea." They'll think I'm mad, right? So it'll teach you all these aspects, the challenge. Then when you slowly start transitioning to making it a habit for life, you know what you're going to face. And that is the way to start using challenges instead of thinking about habits. Like through the whole lockdown, the first lockdown was a 21-day lockdown. So everyone said 21-day, I will try and make this change, that change. Those were technically challenges, right? That people were trying. They weren't trying to make habits.
Let's go deeper into habits versus challenges, right? Maybe not versus, but like it's understanding the difference. Because I think there's an interesting piece that comes with that as well. You're, is it because you're giving your mind almost like a finite, like there's an end point to this? So if it doesn't, if you don't like it, it's fine. So it's
Correct.
It's low pressure. It's also very gamified.
It's gamified.
It feels like it's a fun, like, you're on this, like, oh, let me try not, like, I don't think.
It's boasty more than gamified.
You can also like go out and say, I'm doing this and nobody's going to judge you.
Correct.
Oh, wow, you're doing this. It's so cool.
I'm not drinking for 30 days has a different reaction from I don't drink. I don't drink. What? Why? What sort of person are you that you don't drink? Right? I'm doing a challenge for 30 days. Okay, fine. I'll support you in it. So the way that people respond also is very interesting in those too.
And then you keep doing the challenge long enough that it becomes a habit.
Ideally not, but like you figure out how you're going to transition it to a habit. But yeah.
So it's like learning, right? As someone, I remember reading somewhere, I think it was Ryan Holiday, and all his courses are challenges. They're not courses.
Correct.
And he'll say 21-day challenge, which is to learn how to read, or like a 30-day challenge to become a better, to live a stoic life, and so on and so forth. And I always found that fact that he took the challenge route was interesting. But now when you're saying this, it makes sense, because if you're inherently asking for a shift in lifestyle, a fundamental move away from how you are living your life, a challenge somehow makes it seem like, oh,
I can do it. I can do it. And for example, for Ryan Holidays, it is actually a mental change that you want to make. Most of it will be mental challenges that are taking place, right? You're trying to reprogram your brain in a particular way, because the Stoic philosophies are beautiful, and getting them into your life requires that hatke se look on life. Absolutely.
What has changed in your own perception of habits the more you've gone down this journey, especially over the last few years?
So, there were two interesting things that happened. The first one was understanding that many people are not willing to make a change for their habits, right? I'm from the philosophy that comes from saying that we want awesome life. I want to evolve through life. There are many people who don't want to. I'm happy the way things are. Lovely, great. So wrong TG only, right? So that is one big learning that I got. The second one was, I think a few years ago, there was a Sadhguru video that went around where he was saying habits are useless, right? Why would you want to live a subconscious life where you realize that you try and build a habit so that you're not consciously aware of what you're doing? And because it was a Sadhguru video, everyone sent it to me, right? So my DMs were full of people sending me this one video. And my first reaction was, how dare he say something about habits, correct? Then I spent more time thinking about it and I realized that he's absolutely right about it. Why would I want to live an unconscious life, subconscious life? I'd much rather make changes that are conscious or be aware of the things that I'm doing now, right? How can I be more present in the moment itself as a habit, right? Am I completely here with you right now, or am I thinking about what I'll have for lunch? Right? Am I thinking about the dal chawal I had day before yesterday? Where am I right now? And imagine doing that in each of your habits. So it is not just a subconscious one. Like, your gym habit is not subconscious. It can't be, right? You have to be very conscious about saying, Baba, I'm going to the gym today, right? We normally think all habits are subconscious. No, most of the ones are very conscious. The way we tie our shoelace is subconscious, right? But the other ones that we actually want in our life, very conscious habits.
When you ask someone, But how do you stay more present? Because you brought that up. It also goes back to you need to meditate and explain being present to someone who doesn't get how that can like be a core part of just how they should live. Because I feel oftentimes people don't get, they either seems very woo woo, but how do you kind of distill that down in a very like in normal language?
Nice. So you'll first understand why being present is important, and then we'll talk about maybe 2-3 habits that you can do for being present. So why is being present important? It is because whenever you're living in the future, you're either living in a state of worry, fear, or anxiety. Okay. What will happen in the future? Primarily only the thoughts that we think about. Right? Where do we have good thoughts about the future? Very rarely.
Very rarely.
When we think about the past, it is either sadness that we experience, oh gosh, right? Or it is a memory that brings us a little bit of joy, which is reminiscing, right? Those are the two aspects. But what we don't realize is all the other width of emotions happen right now, right? All the other width of emotions, the experiences take place right now. And very often we are not aware of what our 5+ senses are doing at this point of time. Okay. When we eat a meal, there are so many times at the end of the dinner, we'll wonder what we just ate. Right? We go to a fancy meal, we spend thousands of rupees on it. And I come out and say, but I forgot what I ate. Because we weren't present in what we were doing at that point of time. We weren't experiencing it completely in what we were doing at that point of time, which is why being at this moment is beautiful. Because when you're here, there is nothing to fear. There is nothing to be sad about. Everything's happening right now. That's the first thing. A couple of ways to be present. One is a somatic way. Okay, so some of you all might have seen on the video, I did this from time to time, right? Rubbing your jeans or clothes brings you back to this moment because you're feeling the textures that are there, right? Becoming aware of a sound brings you back to this moment. Like right now on the mic, you might hear that there is the refrigerator that has started, right? Are you completely present at this moment on knowing what is happening? And when you're with, for example, some spiritual leaders who are in this state permanently, they will know and be in complete awareness about what is happening around them. What is he thinking right now? What is she thinking right now? Body language, everything completely in that space. Because it is that awareness that you spread through. So I think when you talk about being here now, that is the way to start understanding it.
The sensory piece you spoke about, right? Forget what the meditation is called. It's where you first focus on one. If I remember, you focus on one thing, one sound, one smell, and one taste. If I remember it, right?
Your mouth has a taste which we don't realize.
And you just focus on those. You want to kind of bring yourself to the present. You focus on one aspect of each of your senses, and the more you focus on those and go step by step, you will kind of like any other clutter you had in your head kind of goes away and brings you down to that clear box. I asked about present also because we're all multitasking so much. We're all trying to do too many things at the same time. We're all supposed to be like, what's that? If Medusa had hands instead of hair, we would be a version of that to do all those things, right? And that's the requirement the modern world has. And this is almost asking you to say, no, you're going singular, you're going that way. And I feel the worry most people have is if I'm too present and not focusing on how I need to kind of go everywhere, what if I miss out? What would you say to that?
It's a 3-step process. It is plan for the future. That means you allocate time when you're planning for the future. You do the task that you have to do in the present. That means when you're doing that task, you're completely here at this moment, giving it your all. That means you're not on your Instagram DMs while you're replying to that email, right? You're completely in this moment at that point of time. And then the third step is once you finish this moment, don't keep worrying about the future. The Bhagavad Gita, surrender to the outcome. That is the third step to this. So you've planned, you've actioned, and you've surrendered. Very often we don't do these 3 steps. Right? We worry, maybe not take action only. Right? Like you've written a book. How many people after that came and told you, I've also been writing a book for the last 5 years. I've also wanted to write a book for the last 6 years. I wanted to write a book. Yeah. Right? So wanted to is still wanting. You're worrying about the future. Nothing's actually happened. So that's why these 3 stages, plan, action and then surrender are very important.
It's funny you mentioned writing the book, right? Because I remember that had to be a habit I built, because I wrote the book in 7-8 months, which meant I had to write on a almost daily basis. So
Schedule.
3 to 4 days a week, like sit down on that seat, put 1,000 words out in about an hour, or because that's the only time I had. And just really push. And even if it was really bad, you just still did the work. But also spend time in learning that that's the process to follow. Like you early on mentioned how before you wrote, you went and like literally read all the stuff about how people write. And I did that. I think I did Malcolm Gladwell's course. I ran through all Ryan Holiday's
All the master
pieces.
classes.
All the master classes. I ran through how Ryan Holiday writes because he puts that out for free. I did Stephen Pressfield because you have to do, Art of War. No, War of Art. Keep forgetting, flipping it around. And just literally tapping into the process I need to put myself into. And that you're almost being inspired by people whose habits, or rather who you are inspired by. If you actually go into what their habits are and what their routines or rituals are, and that might be a better way for you to actually add them into your life, rather than saying, oh, this is what I want to do, like, or rather saying, no, this I want to do this because this person I admire does this. Do you feel that makes you want to do it more?
The way to think about it is that not all people who wake up at 4 a.m. are successful.
That is very true.
Correct? So it is not the 4 a.m. that is making people successful. So the same way, it is not necessarily that particular habit that is making them successful. It is the way that they're utilizing it. Right? In waking up at 4 o'clock, the way you utilize it is what's going to make you successful. You have to pick and choose what makes sense to your sensibilities. So in the same way, I had a 750 word goal. I had a fixed time in the morning. I had a fixed place in the morning where I would sit and do it. And then there was a beautiful habit that one of the authors said, which was never review what you've written. Correct? So you've written it, tharak has happened. Now tomorrow morning when you're writing your next 750 words, you come back, read it so you know where you are. Don't necessarily edit it, just read it, continue writing. Right? And that is the way to do this. So I was like, this makes sense to me. I'm going to implement it and use it. Now, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life is a very easy, casual, self-help conversation kind of a book. But then I had to write a children's book also, right? A children's book had to have characters and story and narrative and plots and all of that. And I was like, now how do I do this? So go back and you realize that the structure and style of writing a book with stories in it is very different from the style of writing a book like this. So the habits had to change for that story book as compared to this one. So accordingly, you had to adapt to it, but the fundamentals stayed the same about I'm going to have 750 words that I'm going to be doing here.
And also when you adapt it, it's like you're making it your own. I feel I don't know about you, but I love watching those videos saying, I did Pablo Picasso's morning routine for 1 week, and this is what I learned, or I did Maya Angelou's, daily routine. And I find those fascinating because that's never going to be long term. But it's always fun to see, okay, which part of that makes sense for me. Maybe I can try adding it in here.
Correct.
It's like everybody talks about cold showers, and I'm like, yeah, of course, I'm never going to do it. But it's interesting to kind of see what they talk about it.
No, so you adapt it in this way. So this is the way that I've adapted cold showers. Okay, look, I went through the whole hardcore, I will only shower cold and all of that. But then there's no fun, no? How you shampoo your hair? How do you...
Where is the maza? Of a nice warm shower?
Correct, exactly. Where's the maza of the shower? So what you do is you have your full hot shower, and the last 1 minute, full off. Cold, here, basta.
Same. Flip it off, just give cold, feel like you've done it. But
it has the same effect. Similar.
I also feel cold showers are a lot better in colder climates because it really might give you that effect a lot more. In warmer climate, what cold shower? It becomes hot by the time it hits your body anyway.
I remember the first time in London, switched it to cold. Electricity it was. It was like full shock.
Yeah, it's like one inside the fridge.
Full.
Because that's what I'm like. I was talking to someone about cold showers the other day and he's like, I've been taking cold showers my entire life. He's like, I live in Bombay. It's so hot. Why will I take a hot bath? I'm like, that's a fair point.
It's very cute. Like all these fitness trends come up, right? And for most of these things, because curious, I did all these 8 years ago, 9 years ago, right? So now they're passé for me. But like everyone's like, I'm doing cold showers. Ashdin, will you come and join us in a nice bath? And I was like, yeah, sure. Sitting inside 7 minutes, 8 minutes. They're like, why? I was like, I've been doing this like for the last God knows how many years. So, it's so interesting seeing that we've discovered it now. We're going to, but I think the more curious you are, you're going to experience so much. All those glucose patches and stuff like that.
I tried that for one day.
One day you took it off.
I put it on. It just felt I felt uncomfortable with it, and I just said, "Do I really need to do it? I don't necessarily have to do it." And I've learned to calibrate that. I think a lot of the choices is I'll try something out. I'll give myself like a short period of time.
Does it make sense? Does it not make sense?
Do I really need to do this? And I'm like, I don't. Just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean I do it. And I literally had a box of those and I gave it to a friend who was anyways already was subscribed, so that you just have a few extras to use.
No, so for me it was I used to use it about 4-5 years ago, because at that point of time the only way to get your blood sugar was through a pinprick, and I used to do these fasting 5-day fast, 3-day fast, etc. So I wanted to know what was happening to my blood sugar. So it was very painful doing those things. So for me this was a suitable tool at that point of time. So 4-5 years ago when I asked my doctor to do it, she said, "Why? But you're not a type 1 diabetic. Why do you need it?" So I was like, curiosity.
And curiosity is such a, I feel in many ways, if you look at everything that you might want to do in life, the more well-rounded you want to be as an individual, curiosity is at the core of it, right? You just want to build a human connection. You want to feel more confident about yourself. You want to have a conversation. I can just literally go around the entire cycle of things, understand yourself. Everything has to start with you being curious, because curious feels more fun, and it feels less like no, this is what you have to do. It's like, oh, let's figure out what this is, and somehow makes you kind of soak it in a lot better.
What's interesting, before Darwin's whole survival of the fittest happened, there was a person who had said it is the survival of the most adaptable. Right? It was not the fittest that survived, it was the one who could adapt to the world around it, which was a very different perspective, a much kinder perspective to the way evolution took place. Right? It's not about, but it is about, in this situation I will thrive, in that situation also I'll thrive. But how do you know that you'll thrive in that situation? Curiosity. Right? You experience it, explore it, and then you do it.
You also talk about positivity versus positive belief. Explain that.
The way to think about it is, positivity very quickly goes into toxic positivity. That means you see everything as good. Right? Amazing, 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 amazing. Firstly, you'll annoy all your friends, they'll stop talking to you. But the thing is that you have to understand that you need to believe that things will turn out for the best. Right? So there's a difference between saying, oh, this person died, great, he died, which is positivity, versus saying, don't worry, person died, tragedy, but everything will turn out for the best. Right? The best is happening at this moment, come what may. That means we just can't see what is going to happen, but something will come. So it is that belief system that everything will turn out for the better. Many people have a belief system that everything will turn out for the worse. And something that is tragic is that most of the stuff that we see on social media is a belief system that things will come out for the worst, right? The videos on YouTube that score the highest are all negativity videos. Positive videos don't get anything.
People don't want to see that.
No, all chotku subscribers we have, because nobody wants to know what we do well.
It's interesting you say that. And I remember once we were running through a certain amount of data, and we realized that whenever we would start by stating a problem in our content, we would always get a lot more viewing it than when we did stating the solution. And that actually, I remember we had this entire discussion in the office, and what kind of came from that was that people relate to the problem because they have it. They might not relate to the solution because they haven't used that in their life. And but oftentimes what happens is you only state the problem and people aren't giving a solution. People aren't telling you a way out of it. They're saying, it's all dark, it's all going down. There's no light at the end of this tunnel. This tunnel has no end.
Doom and gloom.
Versus saying, no, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but you got to go through the darkness to kind of get to it, is what you're saying.
Correct. You have to understand that there is hope in everything, right? Hope generally makes the world go round, knowing that the future will be better than what it is today, right? Technically, we're living in the best time of human existence. Lowest murder rates, lowest this, lowest death by disease, etc., etc. But the general feeling is that life is bad. Now, how can you have this as a combination? The best possible time in human history, but we're thinking life is bad. Something's wrong.
I have to ask you this because I will get it's very weird that I'm asking this at this point of time in the conversation, but you to talk about a 6-step system to building a habit. And since we've through this process of talking about so many things, I'd be remiss not to ask you that question.
So the way to start thinking about habit change is to understand that it first starts off, like we said, about our intention, right? If you don't understand intention, you've not got the reason why you're doing that habit. So like you said, the 3 whys are very important. So it starts off by identifying what those 3 whys are. The second aspect is understanding the 3 golden rules of habit change. What are the 3 golden rules of habit change? The first one is make it stupidly small. Okay. Words are chosen very carefully when you say stupidly small, because the idea is that if you don't do it, you should feel stupid not doing it. It should be so small that you feel stupid not doing it, right? So that is the second step. The third step is make it extremely easy. Extremely easy. That means you remove the friction from the process. Where many a times what stops us is the friction. That means we have too many excuses for the habit that we want to create. So when you remove friction, we're removing excuses. Every time you create an excuse, that means it is still, friction is there in the system somewhere. The third stage is about consistency, which is never miss 2 days in a row. Okay, so this is, you did a habit on Monday, you did it on Tuesday, Wednesday you missed the habit. Life got in the way, you were ill, you had to go for a wedding, life got in the way. Come what may, Thursday you do the smallest version of that habit. So you can't go to the gym, you'll do 20 push-ups at home. Chalega. But that's what you've done to maintain that consistency, so that you know you're the kind of person that is consistent with the habits that come. The fifth thing is to have an accountability partner, right? If you don't have an accountability partner, what happens is that you don't get that feeling of camaraderie when you're doing this. You feel very alone in this journey of habit change. So which is why the fifth step is having an accountability partner with you, holding you, keeping you accountable, saying that, "Kyun nahi kiya?" Right? How can we make a change in this? Right? Kyun is actually a bad question to ask, but what can we do next time to make this change? And then the last one is review and change. Many times this doesn't take place. So because we've been talking so much about fitness, we'll continue with that example. Many people stagnate in their aesthetic journey, fitness journey. It's because they never reevaluate saying, I've become stronger, I need to do something else, right? Or you've plateaued. So you've never gone through that stage of reevaluating and saying, maybe it is time to do something else. Runners hit a plateau because they haven't started weight training, right? Now, suddenly when they start weight training, they suddenly shoot up. They take a break from running, come back. Their times become better, not increase, decrease, right? All of this starts taking place when you review and say, maybe this is the shift that I need to make going forward. So if you follow these 6, you know that you're on a healthy journey towards this habit.
And this also is almost like the foundational piece for the coaching program you do, right? If you look
Correct.
at the 180,
Awesome 180.
Awesome 180. And I think one of the interesting things about Awesome 180 is you also kind of talk about what really kind of get out of it, which you wouldn't really necessarily assume, right? I'd love you to talk about that as well.
So Awesome 180 started off when I realized that there are 6 fundamentals to create a foundation for our life, right? If this foundation is weak, our buildings will tilt to one side. It's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa that takes place. The 6 foundations are movement and not exercise. Okay. So where we think of, I've worked out for 1 hour, that means I'm an active person. No, if you're sitting for the rest of the time, you're not an active person. So how do you build movement into your daily life? That is one. The second is nutrition, not diet. Okay. So like we were talking about challenges, right? Diets are challenges. Diets are not a way of life. Right? I am on a diet for the next 60 days. I am on a diet for the next 30 days. Chances are you're probably going to be on a diet for 2 days.
Yeah.
Most people don't last till 30 or 60 days.
Yeah.
Right? So diets are like that. Instead, you have to understand nutrition principles and then decide that these are the principles I will follow. I will not put anything into my mouth unless I know how it was made. Nutrition principle. Right? Like that. I will not put anything into my mouth that came from a factory. Nutrition principle. Those ways. The third is quality of sleep, not quantity. Normally, when you have a conversation about sleep, it is I sleep 8 hours, I sleep 9 hours. But nobody tells you about the quality of the sleep. How well did you sleep for those 9 hours? Right? How well did you sleep for those 6 hours? Improving quality is far better than improving time. Getting the right time for your sleep is important in terms of sleeping at 1 o'clock versus 10 o'clock, but otherwise, quality is more important than that. Then after that, we come to our hydration, right? We don't realize that water not only helps in our digestion, but improves our energy flow, right? All these things are critical. We know that 70 plus % of our body is made up of water. And if we don't focus on the water, what are we actually taking care? We only think I need to drink 3 liters. No, but what is the quality of the water? Where did you store the water? How did you take care of the water before it came into you? Nobody thinks about care of water, right? But you will care for the banana that you're eating, right? You will not have a banana with black spots, correct? And why would you have a water that is not necessarily optimized for you? So that is one way. Then we have breathing, okay? You can live without food for God knows how long. Some breatharians can live forever, right? You can live for water for a few days. But breathing, it's such a fundamental aspect of our life that we are not conscious about. Luckily, in the last 3 years, we become conscious about it only because we get that AQI ka chapa
Yeah.
every day from
It's
our
on my home screen now. I look
correct.
at it, yeah.
Google feed gives us AQI or Apple gives us AQI, which is why we know about our breathing. But till then, we never actually thought about it. And most of us breathe through our mouth. We don't breathe through our nose. We have bad breathing practices. In fact, when you go to a monastery, the first step is they teach you how to breathe, not breathing meditation, just how to breathe. Then you get to the other aspects of it, right? So that is one. And the final of the 6 pillars is de-stressing, not stress management. Stress management is I can take more stress on, right? I have bigger shoulders, kante bade hai, I can do that. But we're saying de-stressing. That means how do I take the stress and now put it down and continue my journey instead of carrying it with me? Most of us are just carrying stress, right? Most of us are just carrying all this baggage from the past. Do we know how to put it down and continue walking? So it's these 6 fundamentals. Now, most people have 1 or 2 in place, but having 6 in place dramatically changes the way that your life gets structured.
And some of these are like pieces we don't necessarily talk about enough, right? Like de-stressing is something you don't talk about enough. Hydration weirdly gets really relegated to one corner. I feel breathing we're still talking about because of just generally, I feel we've all focused a lot more on breath in recent times. Because you get the nutrition, sleep is always there. But hydration for me is the most interesting one because it's like the most basic thing. Like I'm terrible with hydration. It's one of my, I think one of the things I've sat down and said I need to drink more water because I forget. I'll forget drink water and I'll feel parched, and that's when the sugar I realize happens when I'm actually thirsty, and I go for sugar instead of picking up a glass of water. And the more water I drink, the less cravings I have for other things. So most times you're just thirsty.
Correct. So your body can't tell the difference between hunger and thirst. That is step 1. So when we do our intermittent fasting and when we're doing long-term fasting, we first realize that every time you're hungry, you first drink water because chances are that you were thirsty instead. And it is not drink water so that your stomach feels full. No, it is actually that your body was asking for water and you were giving it a sandwich all this while.
I have to ask you a question. What's with the beard? Explain the beard. I know I bought it, but I just thought it's important to put on record for anybody watching
and wondering why is
Ashdin's beard like this? What is the deal with the beard?
So I'm sure you have the same problem, that you have interesting people on your podcast and they say interesting things and you immediately want to try everything out that they say. Correct? So this is a problem with having a podcast with amazing guests on. I had this Swami from the Art of Living, Swami Purna Chaitanya. He had launched the books, he had come to discuss it, etc. And he's this Dutch Swami. So white guy, brown hair, brown long hair here, brown beard. And he looked like that entire conversation was I was talking to Jesus. Right? It was just this funny portrayal of, like the current version of Jesus that we have, not getting into the politicized version of what we're talking about. But I was like, why do all of them have long hair? And in typical YouTube mind-reading fashion, one Sadhguru video popped up. Somebody asked Sadhguru, why do all you God men have long hair? So Sadhguru said, I should be asking you why you cut your hair. I'm doing nothing to it, right? You are cutting your hair. I'm leaving it the way it is. There must be some intelligence to why the body has done this. You don't feel pain in your hair, so you trim it for vanity. You might not feel pain in your ear, you might trim your ear for vanity. Who knows? Right? So, what is the purpose of hair? Currently, you're not subtle enough to understand. So now curiosity through the roof. So I went down this whole rabbit hole. So I went into Sikhism, why Sikhism talks about hair, what is up with the American Indians talking about hair, what kind of powers they associate with it, what is it about the people in the Caribbean and having dreadlocks. So it was a complete journey. And I was like, I'm not trying to impress anyone right now. Luckily, I don't have to go to corporates and get judged on the way that I look currently. So let me see what happens. Right. And it is about experimenting on myself before I go and tell anybody else to do something. And it's been 8 months. Haven't touched my beard, haven't touched my hair. Mustache keeps getting trimmed. That's it. So that, we don't have food mistakes taking place. But apart from that, it's been a lovely journey. And not so lovely also if you are constantly affected by what people think of you, because what it does is it completely trashes whatever image that you had of yourself, right? My mom once called me a fisherman, all sorts of strange things I have been called through this entire journey. But the best one was finally at this event. So I interviewed Jay Shetty for his book, right? So at the event, I was coming down, I was talking, and this lady comes up to me and say, I'm sorry, but I have to tell you this. You look like a pagan god. And I was like, finally someone has seen the light. Instead of being called a fisherman, pagan god. Yes, that is what it is. So that was
Makes
the
sense.
story.
I mean, I remember the first time I started to grow a beard, and obviously I have much more groomed beard and more. When I say groomed, I cut it short. You have let it grow. It's almost like you are asking people to, on one end, you're not asking people to not judge you. You don't care about being judged as much, and you come to that point at some level.
Yeah. It was very interesting where I was so conscious about I will not do the video today because I have not shaved. Right. From that point to saying that it's okay what I look like, that was one nice ego dissolution kind of thing that happened. But the problem with this is suddenly now your identities become the long hair and the beard. So new ego identity has cropped up, which you did not expect to suddenly happen.
I was like, I can't take it off. Now it's a thing.
Now it's a thing. It was so funny at Lollapalooza. People would come from far away and say, hey, listen, can I take a picture with you? Oh, I know you're a habit coach. Now it was like I was sticking out like a thumb.
My funniest piece to tell anyone with a beard as long as yours is, have you tried the beard mask? Which is, there was this whole piece that came out where people who had long beards during COVID, when we were all wearing masks, would use a band and put the mask on top of their mouth and tie it with a rubber band. Have you tried the beard mask?
I tried beard mask and tried the beard ninja, which was this beard comes up till here and the hair comes down till here. You look like a ninja. Wear school sunglasses and that's it. It's a lot of fun, I think. It's just like if you're having masti. And actually, as a man, we don't normally have things that we take care of. Right? Like we're used to our fingers, so we take them for granted. Now this is suddenly new, right? So it's a new plaything.
I call the beard a pet. I feel maintaining or growing a beard is like having almost like it's like what's the like bonsai, right? Like how people who have bonsai, when they're like going really to it, you spend time with it. You understand it. You see how it grows. You understand its own problems and what it does to your face. And allows you to also be patient with it. It won't just grow on you.
So patient.
And sometimes if you do have a bad trimming incident, you know that it will grow back, but you just have to be patient for it to grow back the way it has, right? And I feel the beard is in many ways for most men to understand the power of just the patient habit formation of just letting something be and being present. Nothing like growing a beard. I would put it that way.
So there is a thing called a yeard, which is a year-long beard. That means for a year, you don't trim. So I would strongly suggest everyone try a yeard in their life at some point of time. The amount that you will learn about you and about how your friends perceive you. It is crazy, right? The social aspect of the beard, I think, is far more interesting than what's happening to you. People's reactions to it, polarization.
I could kind of go on with this conversation, but I always do this where I stop the conversation at a point when I know people want more and hopefully call you back. But I have one last question for you. It's through this entire journey that you had, and and across all the guests you had on your podcast, is there one piece of advice someone's given you, or even a statement someone said that stayed with you and kind of helped you along this journey?
I think um, the most recent one, let me tell you a very interesting one that happened. I was interviewing a book reader, and he was talking about one story about where a king had um, had told the forger of the weaponries to write a statement on his shield. Do you know the story? So on his shield, he asked for a statement to be written that when he lost the war would not make him feel too bad. When he won a war would not make him feel too happy. Right? So this blacksmith says, I don't know how to do this. And he goes to the monk. The monk tells him, write this on his shield. This too shall pass. Right? So and it struck me so hard because I realized that during your worst of worst moments, you realize this too shall pass. It's not going to be there permanently. And during your best of best moments, it adds that little bit of humility to you, saying, enjoy this while it is there right now, because it will not be there in the future. Right? And I had a very, very deep moment of this when I was coming back from Delhi. I just finished signing the books and I'd gone to various bookshops and I was doing the signing. And people had come from Gurgaon, Noida, Jaipur just to spend those 5 minutes with me for that book signing. And they would tell about the stories about how listening to the podcast helped them, etc., etc., etc. And I was sitting in the car and I was feeling so emotional. I was like welling up, I was crying. And in my mind, I was like, this too shall pass. Enjoy this. Don't say, aaram se ho jayega. Nahin. Enjoy this moment. Continue it. Who knows what was going to happen in the future? So I think this was something recently that happened that really stayed with me.
You know, that story made me think of something, and there's this interview of Robert De Niro in I think the Hollywood Reporter Roundtables, where he says this, you know. So in my head, when you sing The Monk, in my head, the monk was Robert De Niro, because he says that, and he was asked in this one Hollywood Roundtable, and he said this exact thing: whatever you learned across all these, he said, this too shall pass. And if a Robert De Niro can say that, then, or was it Robert De Niro? Or was it? No, it was Tom Hanks. Sorry, my mistake. It was Tom Hanks who said it, saying this too shall pass. Robert De Niro said that just be calm. You don't have to jump up. But yeah, it's not a bad flip for
No,
me
it's
to
so
imagine
interesting.
Robert De Niro as Tom Hanks or Tom Hanks as Robert De Niro. But
Normally you do Al Pacino, Robert De Niro mix-ups. But yeah,
thank you so much for doing this, Ashdin. Thank you for doing everything that you do for people to understand habits. And thank you for coming on the show.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. So happy that we could finally do this. It's
Finally,
been
yeah.
ages.